Shalom, I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation with the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as the current situation with Iran. First, regarding the peace process. Given that the current peace process between Israel and the Palestinians is suspended because of lack of agreement on how to advance the process from their January talks held in Jordan, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said that he plans on making a dramatic announcement in the next week regarding the Palestinians' planned course of action. Hana Amira, a member of the PLO Executive Committee, said that the Palestinians are weighing whether to continue its present security and economic cooperation with Israel. Furthermore, the Palestinians have said that they will also explore the possibility of once again approaching the United Nations Security Council and General Assembly to obtain some form of official recognition of a Palestinian state by the United Nations. Regarding Jerusalem, speaking at an international conference for the defense of Jerusalem in Doha, Qatar, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas said, "The Israeli occupation authorities are using the ugliest and most dangerous means to implement plans to erase and remove the Arab, Islamic, and the Christian character of East Jerusalem. In doing so, he made no mention of Jerusalem's Jewish history." In addition, Abbas called on Arabs and Muslims to visit Jerusalem in the face of what he called Israel's accelerated efforts to Judaize the city. An Israeli official responded by saying that if the Palestinians continue to deny reality and totally negate Jewish rights in Jerusalem, then there will be no basis for peace and coexistence. Next, we're going to share with you regarding the current situation with Iran and the prospects for war in the Middle East involving Israel, the United States, and Iran. The United States continues its efforts to put the economic squeeze upon Iran in order to try to persuade it to stop their nuclear program. In seeking to do so, the United States Treasury Department broke up a Dubai-based banking operation that the United States believed was being used as Iran's primary means for evading international sanctions and processing its oil sales to other countries. In addition, the United States had direct words to say to India, China, and Turkey on reducing their dependence for and eliminating their purchases of Iranian oil in an effort to encourage them to join the Western-led international boycott on buying Iranian oil. However, these countries said that they will continue to import oil from Iran. Anthony Blinken, National Security Advisor to U.S. Vice President Joe Biden, said that U.S. policy on Iran is aimed at buying time and continuing to move this problem into the future. Blinken also said that the United States believes that Iran has not made a decision to produce a nuclear weapon. They are not on the verge of getting a nuclear weapon, and there is still time and space for diplomacy to work. Blinken said that the Obama administration's policy of diplomacy backed by tough sanctions is taking its toll on the Iranian economy, which cannot access 70% of its foreign reserves, and it's finding it increasingly difficult to acquire materials for its nuclear industry and is being boycotted by a list that reads like a who's who of leading companies of the world. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected the idea that renewed international negotiations with Iran aimed at preventing the country from building a nuclear weapon will work. It could do again what it's done before. It could pursue or exploit the talks as they've done in the past to deceive and delay so that they can continue to advance their nuclear program and get to the nuclear finish line by running out the clock, so to speak. I think the international community should not fall into this trap, Netanyahu said. Meanwhile, Israeli officials say They won't warn the United States if they decide to launch a preemptive strike against the Iranian nuclear facilities, according to one U.S. intelligence official familiar with recent high-level talks held between the United States and Israel. Israeli officials said that if they eventually decide a strike on Iran is necessary, they would keep the Americans in the dark to decrease the likelihood that the United States would be held responsible for failing to stop Israel's potential attack. The United States has been working with the Israelis for months to persuade them that an attack would only be a temporary setback to Iran's nuclear program. Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to the United States, where he will address the pro-Israeli lobby AIPAC in its annual policy conference to be held March the 4th through the 6th. While in the United States, Netanyahu will meet with U.S. President Barack Obama on March the 5th in a meeting which will largely center around Iran's continued development of its nuclear program. According to a senior Israeli official, Netanyahu will use the opportunity with Obama to publicly harden his position against Iran. Netanyahu wants Obama to make further-reaching declarations on what action the United States is likely to take to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon than just the vague assertion that, quote-unquote, all options are on the table, which has been the U.S. stated position on the matter. In particular, Netanyahu wants Obama to state unequivocally that the United States is preparing for a military operation in the event that Iran crosses certain red lines. Officials in both Israel and the United States acknowledge a serious lack of trust between Israel and the United States with regard to the issue of a possible strike on Iran's nuclear facilities. U.S. President Barack Obama intends to tell Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that he wants to solve the Iranian nuclear problem permanently as opposed to temporarily, based upon an interview that Obama gave to the magazine The Atlantic. In an effort to show his commitment to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons, Obama said, "I think that the Israeli government recognizes that, as the President of the United States, I don't bluff." He went on to say that both the Iranian and the Israeli governments recognize that when the United States says that it's unacceptable for Iran to have a nuclear weapon, we mean what we say. In a further effort to show that the United States is serious about its military option against Iran's nuclear program, U.S. Pentagon officials said on March the 1st that military options are being prepared, which includes providing refueling for Israeli planes and includes attacking the pillars of the Iranian government. Israel's Defense Minister Ehud Barak flew to the United States to try to work out with U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta in a meeting held on February the 29th, a formula to bridge the tactical differences between the United States and Israel regarding how to deal with the Iranian nuclear threat. However, the Israeli intelligence news organization Debka reports that Barak came back to Israel to inform Netanyahu that he had failed. In order to emphasize the U.S. position of negotiations with Iran over a military confrontation, White House spokesman Jay Carney said, "I think we have been clear about this, that any Israeli military action in that region threatens greater instability in the region. Because Iran borders both Afghanistan and Iraq, we have civilian personnel in Iraq, and we have military personnel as well as civilians in Afghanistan," Carney added. "But our approach right now is to continue to pursue the diplomatic path that we've taken, combined with very aggressive sanctions. Obama is waiting anxiously to see if the Iranians turn up for nuclear talks with the 5 UN Security Council permanent members, which includes Russia, China, the United States, Britain, and France, along with Germany, that is scheduled to take place in Istanbul, Turkey, next month." In response, senior American and Israeli officials said on March the 1st that this statement confirmed that Obama has turned down 2 key Israeli requests. Number 1, to set final and absolute red lines for Iran's nuclear program, which, if crossed, would provide the grounds for the U.S. and Israel to strike its nuclear sites. And number 2, to stop stating that the U.S. policy toward Iran consists of, quote-unquote, all options are on the table for stopping Iran gaining a nuclear weapon, and instead move toward a more definite language for specifying American military contingencies. In a recent New York Times article, former Israeli military intelligence chief Amos Yadlin wrote, asking Israel's leaders to abide by America's timetable and hence allowing Israel's window of opportunity to be closed is to make the United States a de facto proxy for Israel's security, which is a tremendous leap of faith for Israelis faced with a looming Iranian bomb. When Obama said, I think the Israeli people understand it, in reference to the refrain of all options are on the table, he ignored the widening gap between his take on the state of Iran's nuclear program and the conclusions reached by Israel's political, military, and intelligence leaders and experts. The Israeli view was laid out clearly by Yadlin when he wrote, that moment of decision will occur when Iran is on the verge of shielding its nuclear facilities from a successful attack, what Israeli leaders have called the zone of immunity. U.S. intelligence and the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency are convinced that Iran is already in the second stage and possibly the third of its operation to shield its nuclear facilities in one or more zones of immunity. This ominous development is ignored in the U.S. President's interview, when he declared the Israeli people understand that the United States isn't bluffing when it says that, quote-unquote, all options are on the table. Obama no doubt recalled the disagreement with Netanyahu going back around 6 months ago when the Israeli Prime Minister asked him privately on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in September to lay down a U.S.-Israeli consensus on red lines for Iran's nuclear program beyond which the U.S. President would be committed to strike Iran. In return, Israel would promise to refrain from attacking Iran and follow the United States' lead on the issue. However, U.S. President Obama turned down Netanyahu. Israel has not relinquished its position, which Yadlin put very clearly. What is needed is an ironclad American assurance that if Israel refrains from acting in its own window of opportunity and all other options have failed to halt Iran's nuclear program, the United States will act to prevent a nuclear Iran while it is still within its power to do so. The absence of that American assurance is keeping Israel from a commitment to refrain from attacking Iran. Well, that is going to conclude this week's Focus Israel report. And in this week's report, we looked at the current situation regarding the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, and the Palestinians are planning on sending a letter to Israel outlining their demands regarding the resumption of direct talks with Israel. Otherwise, they will once again go to the United Nations and seek recognition of a Palestinian state based upon 67 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. And regarding Iran, while the United States is continuing its effort to apply pressure on Iran to stop its nuclear program via sanctions, and the United States wants more time to allow diplomacy to work, Israel is concerned that the Iranian progress on their nuclear program is advanced enough that Israel needs to take action in the near future to prevent Iran from finalizing its final phases in the development of its nuclear program, which would be a threat to the state of Israel. So, until we do it again, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.